Our thought for today is I used the free cologne sample that came from a magazine. Somebody said that I smelled nice, so they said, "What are you wearing?" I said, "Page 12. Today the whole house is filled with the fragrance of perfume, the oil that Mary used to anoint Jesus 6 days before his burial." And Jesus says this was preparation for his burial, this act of love from Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. We have today on this Monday of Holy Week. It says 6 days before Passover. So most likely this was a Saturday evening dinner, the night before Palm Sunday. After the sun went down, the Sabbath was over, so they had a feast. And this was to honor Jesus, who had raised Lazarus from the dead. This feast was given by his dear friends, Martha and Mary. And it says that Lazarus was reclining at table with them. Normally when people ate, they did not always recline, only at a large feast or a very special event. And so you could tell because Lazarus was reclining at table, this was a very special feast, a feast of thanksgiving, to thank Jesus for raising their brother from the dead. And it says, of course, Martha was serving. She's always serving the Lord. And notice, though, that she's not worried or stressed out or no more anxiety. She had that before she got to, get to know the Lord. When she said, "Lord, aren't you concerned that my sister Mary is not helping me with the household chores?" That anxiety seems to have left Martha by now. And because Mary takes a liter of costly perfumed oil. This is called aromatic nard, sometimes called spikenard. It came from the Himalayas, most likely from Nepal. So it was a very valuable gift to having a whole liter of this perfumed oil. It said it was worth 300 days' wages. In other words, you'd have to work a whole year to be able to get enough money to buy this. So obviously Martha, Mary, and Lazarus were, a very wealthy family, and they had sometimes these kinds of oils were used as trade or as investments, sometimes as maybe a wedding dowry. But Mary, the sister of Martha and Lazarus, broke it open and poured it all over the Lord, poured it over his feet, over his head, and to anoint his body as an act of love for his burial, Jesus would say. And this occurred in the town of Bethany, just 2 miles outside of Jerusalem. And the Lord would often stay in Bethany at the house of Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. And it was a place of refuge for him. He could go and be with his friends, and it was really a home away from home. And so, as some of the fathers of the church say, that every one of our hearts should be a Bethany for the Lord, a place where the Lord can come and stay in our hearts through Holy Communion, a place where he loves to visit. We used to have a retreat house out in their Front Royal called Bethany House. What a beautiful name for a retreat house, because all of our hearts should be a Bethany for the Lord. And so it says the whole house was filled with this fragrance. And said Judas got a whiff of it. And as Bishop Sheen once wrote, Judas knew the price of everything, but the value of nothing. And he rebuked Mary for this lavish gift upon Jesus. He says, "Why didn't you take this oil and sell it and get 300 days' wages and give the money to the poor?" And of course, John, the other disciple who wrote this, reminds us that it was not concern for the poor, but because Judas was the thief. He was the treasurer of the apostles. He kept the money bag. If people gave contributions, it was his job to buy meals and other things and to give money to the poor. But John says it wasn't because of the poor, because he wanted to steal the money. As St. Thomas Aquinas in his commentary on this says, that oftentimes people cloak their sinfulness in an aura of concern for others, or an aura of virtue, or a cloak of virtue which hides their sinfulness, according to Thomas Aquinas. And that's what Judas was doing. He was pretending to be virtuous and wanting to help the poor, but really he wanted to steal the money. And so what happens next? Jesus then rebukes Judas and says, "Let her alone. Stop criticizing her, for this she has done to prepare me for burial. You will always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me." So for the last 2,000 years, the church has taken care of the poor. It's the number one charitable organization in the world. Think of Mother Teresa and all her nuns and what the church does throughout the world to help the needy and the poor. So the church has continued to take care of the poor for the last 2,000 years. But Jesus said, "You will not always have me with you." So what she has done, this act of kindness, will be accepted. And of course, Judas had enough. After this, that's what it says. He went to the chief priest to hand Jesus over. That was the last straw for Judas. And then lastly, it says the chief priest not only plotted to kill Jesus, but to kill Lazarus as well. Poor Lazarus, he had already died once, and now Jesus raised him up. Now they're going to try to kill him again. And because they wanted to get rid of the evidence, Lazarus was living evidence that Jesus had worked a great miracle, that he had raised Lazarus from the dead after he had been dead for 4 days. It says he was a great witness because many, it says, came to believe in Jesus because of Lazarus being raised from the dead. But they wanted to even kill Lazarus, to use violence, to, at that time, to, in a sense, the cancel culture, to get rid of that person who bothered them, to get rid of the Lord and to get rid of Lazarus. But we know the end of the story, that Jesus, of course, would die on the cross 6 days later, but he'd be raised up on Easter morn.